Here it is. I think I found it. My new favorite motorcycle, the 2013 BMW G650GS Sertão. Now, what is this bike all about? Stay tuned to find out. Zdravo i dobrodošli. Bom dia, bem-vindos. Buenos dias y bienvenidos. Grüezi und willkommen. Greetings riders, and welcome to our channel once again, Pegasus Motorcycle Tours and Consulting, bringing you yet another review of this gorgeous BMW 2013 G650GS Sertão. This might be my favorite motorcycle up until now. I think this is a bike I might actually keep for a change. Since you've probably seen the video of the F650GS, its predecessor and more street-oriented version, you know that I was very pleasantly surprised by what that bike can do, and I've been looking for this one for a while now. These bikes have been really typically upkept because they're kind of rare, so keep an eye out for them, and if you see one, snatch it, because they don't make them anymore. And it's really a damn shame because the GS line has cut its ties with the 650. Now you have a 310, you have an 850, 750, and the 1250. All of those other three bikes are a little too big. The 310 is a little too small. This is kind of like the perfect adventure touring motorcycle for solo riders such as myself who kind of like to just explore. Like I say, I need to be able to pick up the bike, to work on it, to know it's dependable, and I need a light bike that can really do it all, ride the highways with no problems. And I've found that this bike is actually excellent. I mean, absolutely excellent out the door. What this video is going to do, we're going to actually talk about the bike. We're going to compare it a little bit to the KLR and the DR650 as well, just because those are in the same class of motorcycles. This is a single-cylinder 650, so they're very similar in almost every way. But I'm going to tell you why I like this bike more than the others and why I probably will keep it for a while yet. But first, before we start in the details, let's talk about the name. The BMW G650GS Sertão is a more dirt-oriented version that actually was renamed after the Dakar went out of production, or the Dakar basically evolved into the Sertão. Sertão itself is a region in Brazil, in the northeast part of the country. It's very arid, it's very beautiful, very difficult living up there. It's kind of like the cowboy culture, and I've had the pleasure of calling that place home for about a year. I just fell in love with the people, with the culture, with the food, with the music. I lived in a city called Maceió, that's on the coast of the state of Alagoas. Unfortunately, Maceió now is Brazil's most dangerous city, and by extension, one of the most dangerous cities in the world. But that whole region of Brazil is incredibly beautiful, and I always wanted to own this particular motorcycle for the name, simply just because it brings back some great memories despite the amazing features of the motorcycle, which we'll get to in a second. I'm going to teach you how to pronounce this name, and from now on you will never pronounce it incorrectly, like I've seen 99.9% of all the videos and reviews do for this motorcycle. The name is Sertão. It's a nasal "ão." So please, now that you know what it's supposed to sound like, try not to say Sertao, because it's not Sertao, it's Sertão. All right, so now that you know how to pronounce its name, let's talk about the details of this motorcycle. This is the G650GS. It evolved from the F650GS, which, you know, from 2003 on, took over the market of adventure touring. Basically, BMW honestly initiated the whole sector of the industry, which is one of the most popular sectors of the motorcycle industry, with its GS line, dedicated to creating a motorcycle that can really do it all on the street and on the dirt. That's what the GS stands for, Gelandestraße, which means backcountry street. So a bike that can really do it all. Now, if you haven't seen my F650GS review, I highly urge you to do that, because you're going to get the evolution of this whole review, so to speak, because that was the first bike I owned in this line and I really liked it, and I decided to look for this guy because it had every improvement out of the box that I wanted for that motorcycle. So I would highly urge you, pause this video here, go to that one, see what that one's all about. You'll learn a lot, I promise, and then come to this one and see why I believe this is a better motorcycle for my needs, and I believe your needs as well. So as you can see, it better compares to the KLR and the DR650 because it's got a 21 front wheel. It is a tube tire, but again, thanks to one of my viewers who recommended the tubeless system by New Tech, you can actually install this tubeless system in the rim. It requires a little bit of modification of the drilling, and that allows you to run really low PSIs, like in single digits, and run tubeless tires. So that's kind of neat. I intend to do that with this motorcycle. Right now I'm about 15 psi front and less than 20 in the rear, just because these roads are really gnarly and I want to see what it can do. It comes with a 21 front inch wheel, and it's higher than the KLR by about an inch, about 2 inches than the regular F650GS. And it's also got more suspension travel than the KLR and F650GS. So this one has about 8.3 front and rear inches. What is that, 210 millimeters of travel, as compared to 6.4, 6.1, something to that effect of the F650GS. Again, take a look at that video because I compare that motorcycle with the KLR in a very, very direct way. So this is just kind of an extension. So I'm going to be building off of that video and maybe skipping a few steps as well. So just for you to have the whole complete picture, please do look at that video. And our most popular and most engaging video on our channel has been the DR650 versus KLR650 review. In that video, I conclude the DR is a superior motorcycle for a few reasons that you need to see the video for. But I ended up keeping the KLR for the fact that I have another KLR in Europe, so it's easier to have all the tools and, you know, do the valve clearance job and that kind of thing. And then I find the F650GS and I love it. That's a little street-oriented version. It's got a 19 front and not as much suspension travel, but basically the same motorcycle. And then I look and see what could be better than that, and this is the better one. So you get the increased potential for dirt roads with the higher ground clearance and more suspension travel. This here is only about 11 or so pounds lighter than the KLR. So it weighs 421 versus 432 for the KLR. So you do have immediate savings in weight, and you put a Shirai battery in there, you're already less 8 pounds. You get rid of the center stand like I've done, and there goes another 10-15 pounds. So you can really shave it down. And you know, the GS now sells the 310. I don't know for whom, to be honest, because that's a very small motorcycle, not so much physically as potency of that motorcycle. It's still pushing 380 pounds. I reckon that's almost where I'm at right now with all the weight savings, you know, minus the luggage and all that, of course. So I don't know for who that motorcycle is. I mean, I think they should have just stuck with 650, the 750, the 850, and the 1250 now for the more urban adventure tours, I guess. I don't know. But I need a bike that I can pick up, that's light enough for the most gnarly dirt that really pulls me in. And I catch myself in stuff that's really, really difficult. This bike fell today twice in some very, very deep sand. And because the racks are so wide, it doesn't let it fall all the way down. And as you can see, I don't even have engine protection for this motorcycle just because it's so narrow. It's actually about 2 inches lower. I'm talking about seat height than the KLR. It sits about 33 inches. That's a lower setting. You have an option for a higher seat at 35. The KLR sits at 35 inches. And I like that. I'm actually more flat-footed, so it's kind of neat. As I mentioned in the F650GS review, it's a 30-inch seat height, and that's why it's very popular among shorter riders, newer riders, female riders, etc. I really like the fact that they've updated the gas tank cap. Here is plastic now, some kind of red plastic. It's not metal like in the F650GS, because that one just rusted through. When I got that bike, that whole thing was completely rusted through. I revived it, but it took some work. I like the fact that the tank is here because this is not a metal tank. This isn't even a tank because the gas is under here. Another benefit of the BMW, keeps its weight low. It's got a 4.6 gas tank that's underneath the seat, which keeps the weight really low as compared to the KLR, which has a 6.1 gas tank right up top. It's just a lot of weight that you're shuffling around, you know? I just measured my miles per gallon. I got about 56 mixed conditions and low PSI in the tires and whatnot, so I'm very happy with that, to be honest. Loaded like this, shit, I'm very happy about that. It's got a smaller tank than the KLR, but that's not a problem. Both bikes are gonna get a range over 200 miles. The weight is low and I really like it. And like I was saying, I like the fact that it's here because considering this is not metal, I have a strapped down underneath the seat, moto-centric tank bag, and I like it there. It's super convenient and I don't have to take it off the tank. When I would take it off the KLR, because it is a magnetic tank, it's got magnets underneath as well, every now and then I would set it on the little platform next to the gas pump because I would need to remove it to pump gas. One time I forgot it, I had to come back for it, and you know, sometimes you keep your passport there. You should always keep it on your body, because the first thing they take if you get robbed is your tank bag. So I left it there on the gas tank, and sometimes I would pick it up and it would pick some shavings of rusted metal that are there, or dust or dirt, and then I put it on the tank, and next time I peel it off, it just scratches the hell out of the tank. So I like this system. I like the system of having the gas tank underneath, and unlike, for example, the NC750 by Honda, where you have to pop the passenger seat in order to get to the gas tank. Why would, you know, I'm not about to take my luggage off just so I can, you know, pump gas in the vehicle. So this is great. This is really, really great. Other than that, the bike literally is the same as the F650GS. For example, this luggage rack was taken directly off the F650GS, which was a 2003. This is a 2013, and it fits like a glove, fits like it should. So all of that is the same. You still have the aluminum skid plate that's very, very thin, but it honestly does the job. I haven't scraped this thing yet. Every now and then you'll pass a raised hill from a root of a tree growing underneath it, and you might scratch it. So far, I haven't touched this thing. I don't need anything heavier or more heavy duty than this, to be honest. So that really works for me. The brakes on this bike are also the same size and same strength and everything as the F650. They are 300 in the front and 240 in the rear, as opposed to 280 to, I think, 220 for the KLR. So a little bit bigger rotors, both front and rear. And what I like most is steel braided brake lines out of the store. So cool, you don't need to upgrade any of that. Brakes on the KLR are a little soft, also because the weight of the bike being so high just makes it much more difficult for the brakes to actually halt the machine. So having the weight low has a really interesting effect on suspension as well as braking, which amplifies the performance of both those systems. So it's kind of neat. This bike is very, very well thought through. I really like the fact that you can operate the ABS kind of on the fly. You just have to be stopped. You hit the button and it's on, it's off, whatever you need. So that's kind of neat. The engine is exactly the same, 50 horsepower, 44 foot-pounds of torque, compared to 47 horse and 36 foot-pounds of torque with the KLR. The DR is a little more powerful as well, and it reacts better because it's about 60 or so pounds lighter than the KLR. Same Rotax engine that was previously built in Austria. Now it's built in Germany, assembled from parts made in China. But I've spoken to my local BMW dealer, and they said they rarely see the inside of that engine, so that's good news to me. I've learned to love it because I get plenty of power, especially up in a 70, let's say from 55 to 70, no problem. You know, it feels like a motorcycle. You're carving the curves, and it's actually quite enjoyable. Why BMW decided to get rid of the 650 line is beyond me. I don't understand. They introduced the 310, for whom I don't know. That's barely lighter. I mean, it's like 380 some pounds. Not that much lighter for so much less power. That's practically unusable, you know, on the highways and whatnot, with weight, with a passenger, etc. And then they skipped the 650. They have a 750, 850, and a 1250. Almost a 600-pound machine that I could not even consider taking abroad. Like I said, I lived in the most dangerous city in Brazil. After that, I lived in Rio, in a favela in Rio, and my wife is Mexican, and we go to Mexico often, and Mexico has a lot of security issues, and I would never in my life consider taking those motorcycles on the tour alone, especially in urban places of much of Latin America at this point, and a lot of the rest of the world. So you have to think about that. Also, those bikes take premium gas, which I found was very difficult to find abroad in some places. This takes regular, so that shouldn't be an issue. There are a few key differences that they really looked into to improve. I noticed now, having owned both and having really put them through the grinder, I can tell you why this is a superior bike with all those minor differences. You save on the weight, you have more suspension travel, you have more ground clearance, you have an adjustable shock in the rear. It's a Sachs shock, so German engineering. So far, I really, really like it. It also comes with a stabilizer for the forks, something that the KLR doesn't come with. I had Eagle Mike's stabilizer on the KLR, and the KLR really needs it because it's such a heavy machine up top. It's really soft in the forks, they flex. And even with that stabilizer, I still find the BMW a little more rugged, a little more stable, you know, especially when you hit rocks that kick your wheel all of a sudden. It's more predictable behavior out of this suspension system. I can ride this bike so much faster than I can the KLR with more confidence. I never try to push myself to the limit because I'm touring alone. I can't afford to get hurt. I can't afford to break anything on the bikes that I have to now fix and that kind of thing. So this is really, really a great motorcycle. So like I said, lower weight, higher suspension travel, higher ground clearance, and for me, very importantly, EFI. No more carb work, no more gunked up carbs that you have to clean on the side of the road. I hate tinkering with carbs. Wow, that's a big beetle, scared the heck out of me. No more tinkering with carbs in the side of the road in some dusty old village. You just want to be riding. I don't enjoy working on carbs. Some of you might. You like the fact that they're mechanical, that they're, you know, easy to work on. They're not hard to work on, but it's tedious for me. You know, little tiny needles, and you have to take the whole gas tank off and everything off the bike, and it costs you a day, and it's just, I'd rather not, you know. So I like the EFI. Interestingly enough, Aprilia partnered with BMW to make its own 650 line, and that was the Pegasus. And I looked at that bike. It's not appealing physically, but what I find least appealing of all is it's a single cylinder 650, yet for some reason it has two carbs. And to me, that's just not a winning combination at all. More weight, more complicated things that I gotta clean and maintain. No thank you. So I really like the fact that you get EFI in this motorcycle. You don't have to worry about carb work. So you do have the larger wheel, the better ground clearance, and more suspension travel, which make this bike automatically more dirt oriented and more capable. How does that behave on the road? When I first purchased it, I found 65 with the softest setting on the rear shock. I found it to be very wiggly, and honestly, I needed to load it down, really stiffen that shock up, and from then on, 70, 80, 90 miles an hour, no problem. It actually fights the wind a lot better, even with these wide Moose Racing Expedition cases. Another video that we did of how installing these huge 47-liter cases on Tusk removable pannier racks. So take a look at that. That was a really neat experiment. These Expedition cases came directly off the KLR, literally directly off. I just put them on and I did a zip tie just to see how they're gonna fit. I have another set that I'm gonna install for this bike. And another thing that I really like about this bike, the luggage sits so far back and a little bit higher, more so than the KLR. So when you are in sand and loose dirt and suddenly your automatic reaction is for the foot to go down and catch yourself, you're not getting caught between the dirt and your heel kicking the bottom of the cases. That can be very dangerous. You can really break your foot like that. And it's a reaction. It's a knee-jerk reaction that you don't control all the time. Your bike starts to slide and you basically just put your foot down, you catch yourself, but then, you know, momentum takes your foot back and catches it underneath between the sand and carriers, and there goes your foot. Good luck. Alone in the desert with a broken foot. That's a life and death kind of situation. No joke. I mean, how much can you actually stand to sit there, even if you're not losing blood, let's say, but in the sun, you know? Day two. Very hot. Very hot. You got to respect the desert. I found that to be a problem on the KLR. I didn't enjoy that at all. Even on the F650GS, this bike is not that problematic in that regard because it sits higher and the luggage can sit back. So really, it's super far away. It's kind of hard to actually reach it with your heel. Something very important to keep in mind. Don't underestimate that, because when you're touring alone in a place where help is far away, you cannot afford to get hurt. It's very narrow. Even if you do drop it with luggage, you're actually really not probably going to hit the sides like you would on the KLR, which has the plastics and you need to protect them. So there goes another few $100 with a lot of extra weight and width as well. This bike, for example, today I took in the desert. I ate dirt twice, you know, going slow, very deep desert, and the luggage just leaned over. The bike didn't even shut off. I was able to pick it up even in ankle deep sand, you know, with very unsure footing, no problem. And nothing else touched but the bags, and I like that. The bike is very narrow, it's very manageable. I'm flat-footed, and that's really great. It does have a better rack on the rear than the original F650. I don't have a lot of confidence in it, I gotta say. It flexes a little too much for my taste. I like to really anchor down on that, so I'm using the carriers for anchor points. The seat has been super comfortable. The battery is underneath the centerpiece here of what the tank normally is. Not hard to get to. Here you have a little tool kit and whatnot. I don't like the fact that they use the star bolts. I also noticed that they used the thread lock on bolts that really don't need them, and they were just difficult to remove, such as the bolt that is a placeholder for where the carriers bolt onto. no use for that bolt whatsoever other than a placeholder, and they just cranked it down, and I almost stripped it because the thread lock was there. It didn't need to be there, and it's one of these absurd star-shaped bolts that are just difficult to work with, you know. So I wish they wouldn't do stuff like that. BMW is kind of known for making it difficult to work on your own bike. I hate to say it, but it's true. I did have to replace the foot pegs. These actually came directly off the KLR. There's interesting how many parts just bolt on and off on both bikes equally. Aftermarket parts I'm talking about. This is a Tusk foot peg, and I really like it because the stock foot pegs are very, very narrow and they hurt your feet. So these are wider. They're a little bit lighter as well, and they're great. All day, you don't feel it, super comfortable. These Tusk Barkbuster lever guards are also from the KLR. I literally bolted them off, installed them on this bike, as did these ram mount mirrors. They flex, so when you hit a branch and if you fall in dirt and that kind of thing, you can just adjust it doesn't break. I also do wish that the handlebars were raised from factory by about an inch or two, just because it would be more comfortable that way for me, and I'm not tall, I'm 5'8". I would be much more comfortable not having to bend over like that. And also, very, very crucially, because when you turn the handlebars, either the horn or the starter sometimes, annoyingly so, hits your tank bag, and that's not cool at all. They put the horn kind of low, so I tend to hit it in place of canceling my blinkers, and that's a little bit annoying, but I think that just takes getting used to. This one does have a little tack, but it's kind of hard to see. I like the gear ratio at about 60 miles an hour. It's only at halfway point, about 4,000 RPM. The gearing is okay. The gearing is a little bit not as smooth as on the KLR. There's a phantom neutral every now and then, but it's something that takes getting used to. I was actually kind of surprised that that existed on a BMW, you know, and it's not as smooth either as the KLR. KLR's engine is smoother. I mean, it doesn't vibrate as much, especially in the higher speeds. That was another surprising factor. I wanted to see if I can actually get used to that, and sure enough, I did. It's not something that would make you not want to get the bike. So, but I did notice that. That is very, very annoying, the fact that there's these false neutrals here and there in the gearing system. And as well, I don't like the shifter pedal because it doesn't flex. There's no pivot point. So if you lay the bike down or you hit something, it'll break or bend, that kind of thing. It's small, it's narrow, so that's kind of neat. It hugs the side of the motorcycle so that it doesn't catch on stuff. But on the F650GS, I had it bent from having kissed the ground. So yeah, that's another little smaller thing that you would probably have to upgrade pretty soon. And honestly, the Tusk shifter that I had on the KLR fits on this bike as well. Kind of comes out a little more, but it does pivot, so something to consider. What I don't like about it as well is these plastic blinkers that don't flex. I actually broke it just by catching it with my elbow or something absurd yesterday morning, so I had to tape it. I mean, I think they could have done a little better job putting some rubber there so they can flex a little more. You're not gonna really hit it if it hits the ground because it's not that far out, but I smashed it with my hand, and what can you do? They actually raised the bike, but they did not replace the kickstand. So this bike sits really, really angular on the left side on the kickstand to the point of wanting to tip over with any weight like I have now. You always have to strategically think where you're gonna park it so you can put the kickstand on elevated ground. That's kind of absurd. The kickstand's about that short than it needs to be. I hate the fact that I have to change that. I wish they would just include a kickstand that was more appropriate for this motorcycle. I love that they changed the color of these two plastic pieces and the engine to darker gray and black. As I mentioned, one of the things that I didn't like about the F650 is it looked kind of like a toy. The pale light silver looked plastic. It's the same color as this aluminum skid plate, but it just looks like a toy. I didn't like that at all. So this is kind of neat that they did that. They did also include this extended mudguard here, and very, very cool feature, they placed a little tub here that can accommodate a smaller piece of luggage, such as what I would recommend, a red first aid kit, so that, God forbid, if you're ever found on the side of the road or something, anybody that might find you would know, you know, oh, there's a first aid kit. Maybe there's, I don't know, blood clotting medicine or gauzes or powder or a tourniquet, whatever you feel that you should carry in your first aid kit. I have my preferences, and you can see that video as well, but you should definitely have it visible, have it easily reachable. So this is kind of neat that they included that right here on the mudguard of the motorcycle. So I have the TKC's 80s on this bike, and they performed beautifully. I really like these tires. I do believe they do come still with Metzlers, and those are a little more street oriented, but great tires nonetheless. So there it is, 2013 G650GS. Don't get confused, because there was a range of years where BMW decided to be weird and name their 800 motorcycle, the twin cylinder motorcycle, 650GS. So just keep that in mind when looking at these bikes. Make sure it's the single cylinder. So before it was the F650, now it's the G650GS. In more modern terms, the F650GS was actually an 800. So again, keep a lookout, because those are different bikes. They're heavier, they're more powerful, they're 800cc engines. This is just a great motorcycle. So if you do see one, by all means, snatch it, because they are very hard to come by. So one thing that I adore about Southern California, aside from its beautiful mountains and its amazing beaches and the great surf, is that the used motorcycle market here is incredibly rich. You can get anything that your heart desires. So when about a month ago, I noticed for sale on Craigslist the BMW G650X, the Cross Challenge, a bike that's incredibly rare, only in production for about 3 years. It was a bike that was supposed to really do some damage in the serious dirt adventure touring market. I made the mistake of allowing about half an hour to pass before calling the guy, and it sold right away. But then last night in La Jolla, I find this for sale. The first one to call, the first one to get it within an hour, and here it is, the BMW Cross Challenge. Same 650 single cylinder engine used in the G650GS Sertão, but way more dirt oriented, about 60 or so pounds lighter as well. This bike just might be the one that I actually keep for a while. For this though, please stay tuned for another in-depth review of the BMW Cross Challenge, an amazing, superb, almost one of the best motorcycles for ADV touring. In the meantime, ride safe. Until next time, Nick, I'm out.
She's so feisty. You just want to fight. You just want to fight. You just want to fight. You just want to fight.